Today's speaker is Professor Helen Zeng. Um, I know Helen since about maybe a year ago, right? Because we do have a biweekly online faculty prayer group, and she's been very diligent joining our prayer meetings and a lot of sharing. So really know her from that time. I guess so. I'm not going to read through her resume, but I know is she uh, she she got an undergrad from Hong Kong University, right? It's a very tough school, which I cannot get in, but uh, but she did get a BS there, and then her grad school is Columbia and Carnegie Mellon, right? So yeah, and then now she's doing the research now at UC Davis, and so okay, so her talk today is finding God in academia, uh, his faith journey, seeking veritas. Okay, keep it fun.
Great. Let me just start off by thanking women for inviting me, and Fan, Joshua, Millie, all the students for organizing this event, and by thanking each of you for taking the time to be part of this. I'm truly grateful for your presence. I'm looking forward to our time together. If it's helpful, I can take your comments or questions into additional language channels, Cantonese or Mandarin, whichever might be easier for you. When I was first asked to do this, I thought, heck yes, what an incredible privilege. But then when I was prepping, I came to realize it's actually kind of terrifying, try to talk about this big topic, finding God in academia in around 30 to 40 minutes. And also being transparent about my personal experience is like, pulling out a piece of my heart in public. So I hope you will extend a little grace to me as I share a few of my personal reflections. Okay. So this is the plan I have for today. I would start by sharing how I came to know Christ, and then talk about how my Christian faith has shaped the two main pillars of my academic life, including research and teaching, and how through both God has drawn me closer to himself. And I will close with Christian view, which is my role on what it means to pursue good work, good deeds, and what it might look like to build a career that is both meaningful and blessed. So I came to know Christ when I was in college. Well, this is my alma mater, University of Hong Kong. It's not true that women cannot get in. It's just somewhere else. So I spent 4 wonderful years there as a college student. And I happened to enter during a unique time as the university transitioned from a 3-year to 4-year curriculum. And that gave me the opportunity not only to study my core subjects, statistics and mathematics, but also to take a range of interdisciplinary courses on topics like humanity, media, social justice. And those years were also a season of deep personal reflection was the conversation on and beyond campus as I began to think about how knowledge could be used to serve others and contribute to the common good. So I would say that environment stretched me, sparking a growing interest in law, justice, and human flourishing along with my training in data and mathematical tools, which shaped my research path in the future, which I will talk a bit in a few slides. And then in my junior year, I spent 1 semester as an exchange student in the Boston area. That was back in 2014, a little over 10 years ago. And I was very lucky to be there in the fall. So thank you for the patience as we settle the technical difficulties. So if you can see this photo on the top right, it's just shows a very beautiful full lift outside my dorm during my stay there. At that time, I was part of this big group, Hong Kong U New England Alumni Association, which was founded by a couple, Professor Siu, and you can see him in this photo in the middle. Okay. Capturing the moments when we are singing hymns together at a Thanksgiving gathering. When I pull out this photo, I found this kind of interesting. He used to teach here. And then, at the back, if you can see at the back, there is a Chinese poetry is what he wrote on the campus of Stanford when he came back for a visit. And his wife, a social work professor at Willow College, was supposed to be in the photo on the bottom right, yeah. So what stood out most about them wasn't their academic titles, but their deep Christian faith. Since I was a little kid, I had dreamed of becoming a scholar, and they became mentors and role models to me, not just professionally, but more so spiritually. And I was deeply moved by the life they built together, opening their homes to students and offering love and hospitality to people who are often just passing through. And this generosity stood in, stark contrast to the utilitarian mindset I had grown up with. So when they invite me to church, I say yes. And despite very different backgrounds, different upbringing, generations apart from opposite side of Pacific, there was a very surprising sense of connection. I feel like we're rooted in a same tree, although at that time I didn't fully understand where the root come from. So even after the semester ended, we stayed connected. We saw each other in Hong Kong, New York City, Lexington, Cambridge, Boston over the years, and their mentorship and friendship deeply enriched my life. So last semester sort of, planted a seed and began my journey of seeking faith. So after college, I came back to the States for grad school and spent 2 years at Columbia, New York City. At that time, I was part of InterVarsity Graduate Christian Fellowship and continued seeking Christ. And it's sort of, common in Christian circle when you're seeking, people start sending you books. But I would say my draw towards God was very emotional and non-intellect. I remember there were a few weeks during my first semester, I walk on the street. Everything around me looked normal. People around me looked normal, but something inside me had changed. It was as if I was seeing this world through a new lens. I look up into sky, look at the clouds, and the clouds are beautiful. And I feel as though God, the Father, was waving at me from above. Everything you see, trees, flowers, even strangers, seemed more vivid, more alive. And in those moments, I sense, God had known me all along and looking after me and patiently waiting for me to know and love him back. So I didn't come to faith through intellect or theology. I didn't finish the books friends give to me. It's only after becoming a believer, I began to wrestle with deeper questions like the meaning of cross and resurrection. So I was baptized in 2017 in Riverside Church in this photo in the middle. It's just a block away from Columbia's campus. On the right hand is a photo of all the baptism gift the friends gave to me that day. Okay. So since then, I've wanted to dedicate my life and my heart to serving Christ. And the first step was to discern his calling, what he wants for my life. At that time, one story that had deep impact on me is this Live by Nego, which I first heard from a sermon by Tim Keller. It is about an artist named Nego who has a vision of painting a great tree. And he focused intently on a single perfect leaf. But he was constantly interrupted by everyday duties and never finished that painting. He dies having finished only that one leaf. But after death, he was brought into a very beautiful land. There he sees the full tree, complete and glorious, just as he had envisioned, but never managed to finish in this life. So Keller used the story to say that in this life, no matter how noble our calling, right? Whether it's pursuing justice, healing, or advancing science, we may only produce a single leaf. But if we're in Christ, nothing is wasted. And one day in God's new creation, we will see the fullness of the work we long to do. And then the question becomes, how do you find your tree, right? Your calling in this life. Tim Keller suggests 3 helpful guideposts: affinity, ability, and opportunity. Well, affinity without ability is no good. There are people who believe they have the gift of singing, but nobody has the gift of listening to them. And opportunity means that you knock on the door and God open the door for you. And for me, I feel like a very nature process. I use the desires in my heart as the sort of the campus needle on where he want me to get into. And since I was a little kid, I love academy. I love nerds. I dreamed of becoming a scholar. And that desire gets stronger and stronger over time. And so after coming to faith, I longed to be a professor and doing research as a way to worship and glorify him, and also to serve students, maybe by his grace, help lead some to Christ. So I applied to PhD program with that intention, and God made his calling crystal clear to me. He opened the door for me at Carnegie Mellon, where I did my PhD under my advisor, Mike Smith. So this is a photo with him at graduation. Mike had brought the field of digital econ from his training at MIT to CMU, and more importantly, he is a believer. I still remember visiting his office during the application process. And at that time, he had just published his book, Connecting Econ, Technology, and Policy for a General Audience. And we sit down, And I told him that I know he's a believer. And the very first thing he asked was, "Oh, Nate, did you grow up in a Christian family?" And when he asked that question, I had, if not the most, but certainly one of the most socially awkward moments in my life. I start crying. And the reason is that at that time, I was the first believer in my family and carried this deep longing for my parents to come to Christ. And by God's grace, years later, they did through an online Bible study group during the time of pandemic, and remains one of the greatest blessings in my life. And it also remind me that, in the book of Exodus, God did not just save individuals, he also redeemed families. But now that I'm a faculty, I came to know how awkward, embarrassing it could be seeing your student cry in your office for this or that reason. Anyway, so during my PhD, Mike was more than an academic advisor, was also a spiritual mentor, helping me to grow as a scholar committed to truth and God's kingdom. So moving to the second part of the talk, I'd like to share a bit how my Christian faith has shaped the way I approach research and how God has graciously worked together with me in the process. So there are 4 reflections I'd like to offer here. The first one is how he guided me in choosing what to work on in terms of problem picking. Well, I guess an unique advantage of being in academia is that you have the freedom to choose what problem you want to study. And that freedom is a gift and also a responsibility, right? I was trained as an economist studying the econ of technology within a business school context, and I've seen people choose topics for many reasons, because the topics are trendy, or because they could be safer for publication, or because they align with popular funding streams. And all those are valid considerations. As a believer, I found myself and many Christian scholars asking another question, that is, what kind of research can we do to honor God? I've learned to invite him into the process of problem picking. Sometimes that has meant to pursue topics that are meaningful, but might seem risky or marginal within my field. And over time, I've come to see research as part of God's redemptive work, and the vision is to bring light into darkness and order into chaos. In Genesis 1, verse 1 to 2, it says that in the beginning, God created the heaven and earth. Now the earth was formless and empty, darkness was over the surface of the deep. So from the very first lines of Bible, we see God working, and the creation story does not begin with perfection, but with darkness and chaos, right? I asked an AI to generate image for me according to that passage and give me something like this. And then we see God did his creative work by bringing light into darkness and order into chaos. So that has become a guiding image for me. We too are called to step into the places of brokenness and to collaborate with God to restore what is chaotic. So since college, I become interested in law and justice and how this econ and mathematical tools can help shape better policy and legislation. And during my first year in grad school, I began to see this disturbing news articles. Just give you a few illustration examples here, including those in New York Times, on the rise of child sexual abuse materials and the trafficking of minors on the internet facilitated by the use of technology. And I still remember a striking statistic from that time, one that would be more clear if shown graphically. So if we look at the number of the reports of child sexual abuse materials on the internet, and between this graph shows that between 2010 and 2018, when we're looking at the number of those reports, we see a huge increase, right, on the left-hand side, see a huge increase in the number of those reports, and very little increase in the number of arrests, and almost zero increase in federal funding. And I still recall when we invited Los Angeles Police Department Detective Paula Mears to give a talk in our class, and she said something struck me. She said that FBI every year they receive tremendous amount of those reports, but due to the constraint of the resources, they need to prioritize those cases based on the victim's age. And they only have time and resources to go after cases when they believe the victim or the child was under the age of 6. So behind these figures are human lives. If we cannot stop 13, 14-year girl or human being from being abused or sold on the internet, probably we should stop calling ourselves a civilized society. So that's the chaos and brokenness I identify. And since then, we as the team have spent the past few years looking at the econ of the dark side of technology. And I was asked before, why did you choose to study that? And I would say, I didn't choose the problem, but the problem found me, or God called me into the space. And through it, he has shown me the meaning and the dignity of participating in the work of restoring what is broken. Okay. And this brings me to my second point on the essential need to pursue the knowledge of good and evil. When I think more on why technological innovation will facilitate extreme harm like child abuse or harm child safety, I see part of the problem rooted in the growing divide between technology and philosophy. Okay? Technology is advancing at an exponential rate, but philosophy and policy evolve much more slowly, perhaps at a linear rate. And the lack of deep dialogue between these two worlds creates serious challenges, especially when policymakers struggle to keep up with the speed of technological innovation. And this, as a society, we're often unprepared for the consequences that come with new technology. In Genesis 2, verse 9, it says that in the middle of the garden were the trees of life and the trees of knowledge of good and evil. So when we are talking about advancing knowledge today, the focus often centers on science and technology for good reasons. And many of you here, I know, come from STEM background. And those fields have brought extraordinary progress. But this passage just reminds us that the knowledge of good and evil is just as essential. And without it, even our best innovation can unintentionally harm the most vulnerable. And so that's why we need intentional dialogue across disciplines, so that the benefits of technology don't come at the cost of justice or human dignity. And to me, the knowledge of a good and evil is rooted in God's moral law. And studying it give us a glimpse of his character. C.S. Lewis put it beautifully. He says that you find out more about God from the moral law than from the universe in general, just as you find out more about a man by listening to his conversation than by looking at the house he has built. Okay, I'm by no means saying that moral law is a superior way to know God compared to nature science. Rather, I want to highlight the face of God's nature that is being revealed when we wrestle deeply with his moral truths. And this leads to my third point, that is, although I have personal conviction on the topic I'm studying, as a researcher, our goal should be to seek and to report the truth, not to be an advocate. Well, as academic, we hope to be as unbiased as much as possible. And the principle is that you try to find the right data, try to design the empirical approach that is most accurate, and try to draw a conclusion. Not as an advocate, that you start with a conclusion and try to build the data to support that. And as a believer, I found my faith actually helped me embrace that posture of integrity. Well, I still remember a conversation I had with my advisor before starting a project. I asked him, what if we found something that contradict our beliefs? And he simply said that, then we go report the truth. And this is something that I've been wrestling with over the years. And I was asked about this before. Have you ever seen results in econ research that conflict with your beliefs? And the honest answer is yes, sometimes. Well, there are moments when the evidence beautifully align with scripture, and those feels like, encounter with God through doing research, which is wonderful. But just as meaningful are the moments when the results seem odd or hard to reconcile with faith. But as a Christian, I start to see those tensions not as threat, but as invitation for us to dig deeper. Sometimes to, either to re-examine the data or model, asking if something was missed, or to revisit my understanding of God's teaching, which may need to grow. Okay, so these moments can be more formative, and let me give you a quick example. When looking at the dark markets of prostitution, I ran into well-known paper published, I would say, a relatively top econ journal. And the punchline of that paper is that when these online platforms for adult escort advertising were launched, the number of female homicide went down as a result. So in other words, this paper suggests that these dark market platforms can save human lives And as a believer, this finding felt a little bit troubling. But in research, we cannot dismiss findings simply because they challenge our beliefs. We need to engage with rigorous evidence. So this tension sort of, motivated us as a team to dig deeper. And what we found is that the old result was mostly true in large cities. So here I use, if you can see the mouse here, it's mostly true in large cities. Here I use Los Angeles as an illustration example. The data shows that a decline in violence against women after these platforms become available. But when we look at the nearby suburban or rural areas, this donut surrounding the city, violence actually increased in those places. And here's why. So before internet, most of this prostitution-related activities and associated violence against women were mostly concentrated in red light districts within cities. But with the internet, this risky activities had a chance to spread more widely into smaller towns and communities that had previously seen less of it. So the old study was not wrong, it just told part of the story, right? And this extended analysis sort of, revealed a broader picture and helped inform this life and death policy decision. So I would say, when research and faith seem misaligned at first, it can actually invite us to dig deeper and sometimes to a fuller understanding of the truth. That said, I'm not always so lucky. There are some tensions that remain unresolved and I still wrestle with them. But I begin to see those moments not as roadblocks, but as opportunity to grow and keep learning. And I've also learned to be humbled about the limits of the social science I'm doing. In econ and machine learning, we're often good at identifying patterns across population, but we often fall short when it comes to understanding individual behaviors. Individual cannot be simply reduced to data points or correlation. And also every model rests on assumption, right? Often reasonable. But even if one fails, the conclusion may not hold. That's why every paper ends with a limitation section. And that's why doing science should not just cultivate curiosity, but also humility. We are trying to know, but we must also know how much we still don't. And this brings me to my final point. When working on topics where people hold different beliefs, our motivation should be to help and love and not to judge. In Book of John 3, verse 17, it says that, "For God did not send his son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him." If Jesus did not come to condemn, I don't think we have right to. It's very easy to feel that we're on the right side of an issue or doing the noble thing and to see those who disagree as morally wrong. But if we follow Jesus, we are not called to condemn, we are called to help and love. So let me say this clearly. If anyone claims to be a Christian, but somehow leave you with the impression that you are being judged, you are condemned for disagreeing, you have my permission to get up in their face to say they don't understand what Jesus taught. In fact, if I leave you with that impression, you have my permission to get up in my face. I just prefer you wait until I'm done talk. In our work, I try to remember the goal isn't to win the debate, but to seek the truth and ask what is the most loving and helpful way to serve people and community, even in the face of disagreement. So these are a few reflections I have through the journey of doing research. I'll be honored if any part of this is helpful to you. The second pillar of my work is teaching. Not everyone is called to teach, but I think the lesson here applied to anyone in a position of leadership or service. And I want to start with a passage that is very powerful to me from the book of John 13, 5-8. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with a towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" And Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand." "No," said Peter, "you should never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." So this passage picture Jesus, the Lord and teacher, kneel down to wash his disciples' feet, an act seen at that time as one of the lowest form of service. That's why Peter, as disciple of Jesus, was shocked. And at that moment, Jesus redefined leadership not as authority, but as humility and service. And as someone called to teach, I was constantly challenged by this example, and it pushed me to think, um, what I can do on campus for the position he put me in. And there are a few things I like to share with you through the first year of teaching. The first one is God gave me unexpected amount of delight through investing in others. When I was a student, I was very fortunate and blessed to have mentors and advisors who invest in my growth. And at that time, I thought I was in debt to them and simply being the one receiving. And now being on the other side, I realized, investing in others and watching them grow brings even greater joy. Right? It's in those moments I most clearly see the value of my work. Looking back on my first year as a faculty, I would say some of my most delightful moments comes through teaching or mentoring. I taught an MBA class, and at the end of the quarter, a few students were very sweet. They'll come to me say that, how the content has helped them make decision within their startups. And I also had a chance to teach some of the students coming from an athlete background, training for 4 hours in the morning before coming to class, which I found incredibly inspiring. And it also warmed my heart when some of them invite me to watch them train and compete. And also, in business school, some students will come to faculty for advice on startup ideas for competition. And I remember 2 MBA students share this great idea of building a platform to spread regional music inspired by their mother's love for music. It felt like, just a gift to be part of their story. When I was on job market, my advisor told me if you end up being in some business school, you would have students coming from really wealthy background. But God led me to UC, a public university, where I met some students from underprivileged community. And I would say it's a privilege to serve the underprivileged. And the second thing I learned related to that is love is not based on feelings, but a choice. Well, there are moments when students are sweet and supportive, right? And when teaching feels joyful and loving them comes easily. But there are also many moments I need to take a deep breath and tell myself, okay, calm down and carry on teaching. I find this from C.S. Lewis to be very useful to me. He said that when you are behaving as if you love someone, you will presently come to love him. If you injure someone you dislike, you will find yourself disliking more. So this word often says that, follow your heart, love those who you naturally feel drawn to. But Christianity teaches the opposite. That is, we are called to love first, even when the feelings are not there. And affection often grows in the process. Okay, I find this worked decently well for me when facing grumbling students. And I recently had a conversation with an effective friend. She pointed out this actually applied widely to, marriage or teaching. Marriage or parenting. So if you haven't tried, you might want to experiment yourself, but I'd encourage you to practice the first half. You might just end up liking someone you don't at first. Another thing I have learned is the goal is to make others grow, not to make them happy, right? It's to try to make the students grow. There were moments I caught myself aiming for the wrong thing, which is to try to make the students happy, and that would help my teaching evaluation. But when thinking back, the most meaningful class I took weren't the easiest one, but they are the ones that challenged me and helped me grow. And growth is often uncomfortable, even painful. And I've come to see this as part of how God loved us. He didn't prioritize our comfort. He pursued to see our growth. Final reflection on teaching is that vulnerability is not necessarily a weakness, but can be a strength. So this word often equates leadership with authority, but Jesus showed us something very different. After his resurrection, he invited his disciple to touch his wounds, and a powerful act of humility and trust. And I've learned that respect doesn't always come through displaying your strengths. Sometimes it can come through openness and vulnerability. And on the first day of the class, I told my student, oh, this is my first time teaching. It will be a journey for both of us. And I hope that you will extend some grace to me along the way. To my surprise, showing my vulnerability, make them more generous and respectful throughout the course. Well, last and hopefully not least, I want to share my reflection on what it means to pursue good work, good deeds, and to build a career that is both meaningful and a blessing to others. Well, as the most junior faculty member here, I can't, without sounding as absurd as a nun trying to give marital advice, offer my thoughts on this. So take this as just a few humble observations from my journey so far. I know many of you might have deeper insights. I'm looking forward to hearing them. So let me just say a few words to set the ball rolling. First of all, I realized nothing I'm going to say will make much sense without first explaining what Jesus taught about the relationship between good work, good deeds, and being accepted by God. We live in a performance-based world, and the underlying message is that if you perform well, do good, you'll be accepted. If you don't, you'll be rejected. Okay, so every day feel like we're on a trial, we're in a courtroom, and we're constantly seeking our values, seeking validation, seeking the final verdict that says that we matter. But if we rely on our work to prove our worth, it never brings lasting peace or acceptance. Even those who seem to have made it feel this. Here is a quote from Madonna when she talked about her career. She said that, "My drive in life comes from a fear of being mediocre, and that is always pushing me. I push past one spell of it and discover myself as a special human being. But then I feel I'm still mediocre and uninteresting unless I do something else. Because even though I have become somebody, I still have to prove that I'm somebody. My struggle has never ended, and I guess it never will." So this is the reality of a performance-based life. If we rely on our work to prove our worth, it never brings lasting acceptance. But Jesus taught the opposite. That is the idea of grace. And in the gospel, acceptance comes first, not as something we earn, but as a gift, the gift that is supposed to give to us. So yes, they are standards of good behavior, and we've all fall short. But instead of us going on trial, Jesus went on the trial for us. He went into the courtroom. He was beaten and put to death. He took the condemnation we deserve and faced the trial that should be on ours. So we don't have to face trials, any more trials. And we can simply ask God to accept us because of what Jesus has done. And the only one whose opinion counts, look at us, look at you, and says that you are more valuable than anything on earth. So what does this message do with work? Well, quite a lot, frankly. Because we are accepted, right? We no longer work to prove our worth. We can rest in His grace. We don't need to build a resume to feel worthy. We can work out of joy and gratitude and as a way to say thank you to God for the gift He has given to us. So this is the message I need to come back over and over again, even after becoming a Christian. I still find it's very tempting, almost automatic to seek success or validation as a way to justify my worth. So I want to share a bit personal experiences. When I was a doctoral student, by God's grace, there were a few years I feel as long as I put enough efforts, I can see pretty good results. And things went fairly well for a while until I got onto the academic job market. For different reasons, the policy work I was doing didn't align with what many business schools were looking for, so rejections felt crushing. And at that time, I was working harder than ever, but it felt like I had nothing to show for it. I didn't get what I want. And also in that season, I struggled to give grace to others, especially co-authors who move slowly. And I remember a particularly painful rejection from, I would say, relatively prestigious business school. And on call with my advisor, he said that if this is too crushing, it might be because it has become an idol. And I spent months wrestling with that. Well, although I believe that my identity wasn't in my work or affiliation, but I realized I'm still using them to measure my worth. And now looking back, I can honestly say that, I'm grateful. God didn't give me what I want last season, and He was protecting me from going further down the path of chasing prestige or performance as an idol. And letting go the need to look impressive set me free. It gave me so much freedom, right? I'm no longer a slave to my work, but I can work out of joy, love, and gratitude for the work itself and for the one who gave it to me. So grace is such a wonderful news, right? In our work, we all face limitations. too much to do, the energy is constrained, and sometimes we might not be in the right mood. But because God accepts us by grace, we are free to acknowledge our weakness and need for Him and offer the same grace to ourselves and also those around us. So this is the foundation of how I think about a blessed career. It began with a shift in internal motivation. We work not to prove our worth, but to honor God. By doing that, we do not just gain joy, we also gain hope, a sophisticated hope, grounded in God's promise that our work in Him is never wasted. So in 1 Corinthians 15, verse 58, it says that, therefore, my brothers and sisters, stand firm, let nothing move you. Always give yourself fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. Okay. Well, I found this promise to be transforming to me. In academia, it's easy to feel the pressure to build your name or build your kingdom. But if I use my entire career to pursue that goal, I trust that at the end, it will still feel very empty, even if I achieve a lot. A faculty mentor once shared a lot. His advisor, despite winning Nobel Prize in Econ in 2017, still feel the sense of insecurity. But God's promise is different, right? If our work is done in Him and is to glorify Him, even the smallest act of service, or small thing you do to help others, or simplest contribution to knowledge, they are not in vain. We might not see the results immediately, but in ways unseen or invisible to us, God is using them, and He has a bigger vision for each of our lives. Never underestimate the impact of this life we're living in. And this is what I see from my work. Although not every student will show up in your classroom, but through word of mouth, through one life being impacted, and through he or she going outside, impacting others, or end up being in an influential position, God can multiply the impact beyond what I will ever know. Okay. So I want to end up with the slide, going back to the story I mentioned at the beginning, Live by an Eagle. Our lives are short and our careers are even shorter, and there are all kinds of limitations that we're facing. But this is His promise, right? One day when we see Him face to face, we will see the full tree, or the complete work that we only glimpse part in this life. Whether your calling is to pursue justice, building a beautiful city, advancing science, your deepest desire will be fulfilled one day. And this is the hope we carry. Okay, so this is all I have in the slide. It looks like we have probably 10 minutes for discussion. And I want to invite everyone to participate. It's not like less like a Q&A session, but more in big group discussion. But before that, I want to thank you again for allowing me to speak here.
If you have questions, raise your hand. The room is very small, so we will pass it on. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Professor, thank you for your sharing.现在就问了是做的，就是做一个一般的，咱这个是这个外面有个屁股，都是这个 tools， 然后都闹的大爷不犯这个闹一点不然的影响，有的多少也是垃圾的，我想到是安全一个，安全它是very cool 的朋友，保安说那朋友就干的有一种，就是好像有些人但是搞什么大。还有就是说，看到他上面有进行的提醒吧，是报的大是的，还有就是说看到提醒，叫还有我的提醒，只有那个anything在我们的报的是吧？也是他我都还有就看到说不是你到那个有的，一块的在报的就是一报的大就是在我看到说都是怎么的，他有第二位的可能有一种有。colleagues when and how do you handle your failure when you maybe the result in at this time? How do you use the thought lab to help you to deal with?
Yeah. Yeah, how do I face the failures and difficulties throughout the process? Well, I think first of all, we need to have the right mindset, right? Failure is very common. And if I choose to remain in this vocation, I will face more failures than success, right? More rejections than acceptance. So this is sort of the expectation I should have. And I think another thing is that we should view failures from a higher perspective, or the trials and hardship from a higher perspective. I think it's in the book of Romans says that suffering produce endurance, endurance produce character, character produce hope, hope that does not put us in shame. So it's in the times of difficulties and failures, we learn more things, and I hope you agree with me on that. We usually learn more things than failures than in success, and that's the most precious things we can have to offer. And so it's in that process, under the pressure can, sort of push a lump of stone into diamond, which is more precious. And also I think that God used failure to humble us, so that in the future, when we run into someone that we can relate to their experience and their feelings and do things to help and construct them. And I guess the last thought I have on this is, don't let a single event, single failure or success define you, right? Our values are secured in Christ. It's not like our value is not stock market can go high or low. So you're not defined by a single success or failure. No.
Actually, Helen also understand Mandarin too, right?
Yeah, yeah.
那个用中文可以，
嗯
中文我也看历
就是问一个小的问题，我们是如何区分我的工作是believe in God， or believe it's not in God？
我觉得你要看你自己知道你自己心里的东西，就是你做这件事情是为了服侍神，还是为了自己，可能为了自己的 ego。make sense 吗？就是就是我觉得常常要检视心里的东西，然后你有没有把某一件事情放到神之上。但是我自己觉得，在我自己的经历里面，有时候你自己是没有意识的，可能甚至到了在一些时候，可能上帝把一些东西从我生命里面拿走的时候，我才知道哦，原来我把这些东西看得这么重要，可能看得比它还重要。所以我想，我们的心可能不能是完全 pure 的，但是要常常检视自己，说你的动机是什么。就是我想 achieve excellence has no contradiction to face, but we're trying to achieve excellence to represent Christ or to serve our own ego. So that question, I think you can only answer it for yourself. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. No.
I can imagine that doing research in biosexual abuse would be very kind of emotionally and spiritually heavy. What has your experience been of not kind of, of just seeing evil in such a raw form?
Well, it's really heartbreaking, right? At the very beginning, I was digging into the documentaries and literatures, and I would say that to feel heartbreaking and seeing this documentary provided me as motivation to step into the field. I really want to do something to serve the people who are living in darkness. And I guess at that time, things that are useful to me is there are a group of prayer warriors from the brothers and sisters from university, and also my advisor assemble a team of brothers and sisters intercessing for me all the time. And it's in the book of James, right? Book of Romans. The prayers of righteous person is both powerful and effective. So I would say it's always better to be together than to be apart. And I feel really blessed to have a community of brothers and sisters supporting me. I guess another thing that is helpful to me is that I will write down the verse God's word that are powerful to me and attach them in the places where it's very visible and easily for me to see. And God's word is just bring life and remember that He is with me in the process. Yeah. But I would say I run into a group of people who are working on this, and none of them told me that they don't face moments when they feel defeated. But I think the hope we carry is that sometimes it might take a longer time for us to see the impact, but we still have the hope that God is using them in some way. And I would say it's all by God's grace, right? When I am at the age of giving up, He always sends someone telling me, affirming me that you are doing an important work and you are doing God-honoring work. So yeah, it's all by His grace. Yeah.
再问一个问题，就当你在讲，跟学生，你教学生你想让他 grow， 让他 happy， 来，是你要选择 love， 而不是你的 feeling。就是当你和你在工作场合当中，当你说觉得他需要提高的，你是如何以爱的方式来让他 grow？
Yeah. I think I made some mistake along the way, which is, when I did the survey at the midway throughout the quarter, and I remember there was one comment in the survey saying that, oh, I feel it's really discouraging when I try to speak something up in the class. And you always, sort of you have a standard answer in your mind and you are guiding the conversation in a way that you think should be correct or standard. And what I've learned in the process is that, I might be making a mistake by criticizing them in public. You might want to have the criticism in the private mode and encouraging them or try to cheering them up in public. So if I have something that I think it's a constructive suggestion, and I will tell them in private, instead of, like letting them look bad in front of their peers. Does that answer your question?
Yes, very good. So do you afraid that if you hurt them, you need a constructive suggestion?
Well, I think that first of all, I need to look into my heart, examine my motivation. If it's a motivation out from love and helping them to grow, I think they will feel it.
What about the other do not think or?
Yeah. Well, it's a hard one. It's a balance between telling the truth and loving others, right?
Okay. And for me, I'm also interested. I'm so impressed about acting rather than your feeling. So I think every corner of the word talking about love, teach you decline. But what's the difference? Follow Jesus make you easier to achieve that.
Well, standard answer I will give to that is that sometimes you don't have anywhere else to go other than your knees. So a lot of prayer. If I find that I'm running out of love for others, it's helpful to me that to have God instill Christ-like love in my heart, so that I can give others the agape love, regardless how I might be treated or how what their reaction or response might be. Yeah.
渐渐的你会发现越来越不喜欢。那想传递的观点就是像在工作场合，也许你也会很刚开始都蛮有爱的，一起生活，慢慢的就会你发现某个人跟你的一些性格或者是当然你还要对他就是沟通，但是如果他做一些伤害你的事情，那你会发现你也可能同样的方式去对待他，那你慢慢也会更不喜欢。那就是用这个些东西，就是那如何用你的信仰在这个经历上帮你到一个 strategy， 你是如何补充你的爱，或者说和一些四十分的观点不一样。如果他给我同样的爱，那我也会给他。那你就会有这个操练爱，然后在工作中进行对话。
That's a hard one. 我想，神教导我们的就 Christ-like love 应该是，不是以眼还眼，以牙还牙，就是不是别人怎么对你怎么对待别人，也不是根据我们自己心里的感觉。然后我想爱别人，我自己的理解是 you wish them well, give them the best wishes。你希望好的事情发生在他们的身上，所以我觉得这是这个大的原则。我可能没有具体的建议。大的原则就是你不希望坏的事情发生在别人身上，你也不会去参与做这样的事情。那如果我们假设真的是没有这个动力的话，我觉得相信就是神是那个爱的源头，它是可以供应给我们的。
Any more questions? Thank you for sharing it out of your heart.
Thank you.
Also, Millie, our cable car. I'm anticipating this without tape, but didn't work. So yeah. This is our fifth sharing. We're going to have maybe at least one more in the future, and we'll let you know. We have a Facebook page if you guys want to follow up on our future events. And then we're going to close our main event. Afterwards, you can feel free to stay and talk. We have a very diverse people here. We have high school students, community college students, we have undergrads, master's student, PhD student, we have postdocs, we have professors, we have ministers, we have pastors, we have people from the community. So if you guys want to talk afterwards, feel free. And Helen, can you lead us in a prayer?
Dear Heavenly Father, I just want to thank you for gathering us here and knowing that your spirit is among us. And I want to thank you for teaching us along the journey and letting us get to know you. And knowing you is truly the best blessing of this life. And I just pray that your name will be exalted, not just in this room, but also on campus. And I pray that you will use the message today to transform many hearts. And as we go outside, it will be a good testimony and witness for you. And to live out your love and to serve our community, to live out for the purpose that you create us. I thank you, Lord, for listening to our prayer in Jesus' very precious name. Amen.